will hear from three fabulous speakers: Leonard Gilbert, John Plechnick, and Brian Massey. At the end of the speakers, you will have the opportunity to answer any about this tax reform. I am going to start by introducing our first speaker. Leonard Gilbert is a graduate of the Moose House College with majors in math and physics. He's also a graduate of Georgia Tech in medical engineering. He was married to Terry Gilbert for 29 years. God bless her soul. And they have two sons, Christopher and Kevin. Both were homeschooled by their parents. Leonard retired after 34 years in June of 2023 from Avery Dennison. He is a member of the JBS, the John Birch Society, and has been a member since 2009. Leonard enjoys cycling, fishing, writing, history, and he attends the Grace Covenant Church. He is a citizen activist, Citizens Against Property Taxes. Let's give a warm welcome.
I'm doing a little bit of double duty here because typically, oh no, you're fine. It'll actually be fun doing this. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you need the microphone for now? Then what about you, Brian? You good?
Yeah, good.
Okay, good. Because I like to kind of freewheel and have a good time. Because if you're not having fun doing this, then it's going to be for a long ride. You know that? Because I started this about 15 years ago. And I wrote my first editorial, I think it was about 12, 13 years ago, when I started looking at the property tax. And you should have seen the swarm of people just responding to my heart. You're crazy. What's wrong with you? We've always done it this way. And I just said, but it doesn't make it right. So that's where I started, and that's how I met my friend Brian Massey along the path. So just a little bit of background for me. I know she's covered a lot of this. The reason why I put my church up there, because I've been in that church for almost 34 years. Same pew, same elder. And the boys and I sit in the same spot. And my pastor looked at me and said, Leonard, you're going to have to put your name on that pew because that's incredible. So the reason why I also talk about church is because when people start talking about theology and things like that, it matters. Theology matters. Because when I always ask people, this is how I stump a politician. Well, I can't stump them because he's answering all the questions right. I'll ask him, how do you make decisions? And all of a sudden it's blank. And he said, what do you mean by that? I said, how do you differentiate between right and wrong? And he looks at me and said, well, it all depends. Wait a minute now, do you have some type of standard that you use? I have to know, because if I'm going to vote for you, I want to know what you're thinking. And that's when they start to stumble. And that's when I get kicked out of a lot of places too, when I start asking the question. But to me, theology is everything, because my theology is my lifeology. What I believe is how I'm going to act. So if you tell me that I shouldn't be stealing in one location, I won't steal in that location. Every location, I'm going to see theft as theft. That's the bottom line. Same with government. All right. I like to put this up here because whenever I go out and I ask people, do you own your house? Then about 90% of them raise their hand. And then when I tell them, well, not really, do you think you do? They say, well, what do you mean by that, Leonard? And I go and tell them, well, let me give you some hard facts here. You know how you spend your whole life and then you can get the house and you're paying for it and everything. You pay it all off and you all excited. And then all of a sudden, sometimes you might hit some hard times. Now, see, I'm on a fixed income now, so now things look a little different when you're on a fixed income. So when things start to increase and my income stays the same, I said, wait a minute here. I said, there's something wrong. So the point I'm trying to make is this. I bought that house. Government didn't have anything to do with this. I paid the house off. Government didn't pay it off. And now you're telling me I got to pay to stay in my own house. There's something immorally wrong with that. I'm sorry. Now, do you see where the theology is going to come in? All right. Everybody likes to talk doctrine of the simple life, to talk right and wrong. Because that's what my mama did for us. She didn't want to hear all this nonsense. She just said, no, son, if you did something wrong, you're going to have to pay the price for it. So that's how I learned my lessons. All right. This whole property tax system, Brian started getting me involved in it. He started digging all this data. Couldn't figure out anything. It was so complicated. I said, man, I wonder if the average citizen even knows what they're paying into. And guess what? They don't. So I had to dig, and then I got taxes going all over the place, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I didn't vote for that. But there's all kind of stuff embedded in there. Most of the time when you get your tax bill, your property tax, most of the people are going through their the mortgage company, and so they go into escrow, so you don't get a breakdown of what's in there, but you might find almost 30, 35 things attached to that bill before you realize it. And then I feel sorry for a lot of people because they don't know where their money's going. And I go and visit a lot of people that are struggling, and they say, well, what is this? And I said, oh, this is for this. And she said, well, I'm not using that. Why am I paying for that? I said, well, it's this thing called continuous levy, and once you do that, continuous means it goes forever. She said, well, that's not right. This is what I'm dealing with. All right? I tried to fix a leak in my house. It wasn't a new roof that I had to put on there to make it look beautiful. I had to fix it. Guy comes by my house and says, that's going to take your $10,000. Wait a minute here. All I did was, I got to fix a leak here. This is maintenance. Well, the way we evaluate property, your property's going to go up this. And I'm thinking, so now, do I even want to work on my house anymore? So it's a disincentive for me to do anything. Third-party appraisals, you got somebody coming, they don't even come by the house anymore. Now they're using drones and stuff like that, fly you out. And they look and say, oh, man. Then your neighbors, they look and say, oh, man, you put a new deck on there, that's another $20,000. So everybody's just speculating. We have no idea of what's going on behind the scenes. Now, when I have to contest it, guess what? I have to pay money to do that. My own house. I got to pay money to go to prove to somebody, look, this is what I did in my house. And they said, well, no, if you do that, the value goes. Well, I didn't sell it yet. Well, how do you know what my house is worth? Well, this is the formula that we use. It's got this, top priority, top secret formula. And I couldn't figure it out. They said, I said, let me see the data. Well, no, we can't share it. So, and they said it's complicated. You probably couldn't figure it out. I said, no, give me the numbers. I can figure it out. Let me see. But that's a whole other story. All right. I want you to take a look at this because if you get anything out of this presentation tonight, I want you to recognize the reality of where we are in our society. This is critical because this is not just for us. I'm thinking about the next generation. Because if we don't think about that next generation, we've lost sight of why we exist. Because I've been blessed with a wonderful life. We got 2 beautiful kids. My wife trained us well. And let me tell you something. It was an eye-opener for me dealing with what I'm dealing with now because I don't want them to have to go through the same nonsense that I'm going through. And it could be even worse. So when you take a look at this, what does it make you think of? I got an arrow on the up axis here and then across there. What do you think going across the axis? I wanted to ask you a question. How did we get here first? All right. You got the family. You see anything wrong with this?
Yeah.
What's wrong with it?
I think family should be replaced where the federal is, and the federal should be down where the family is.
Oh, can I give her some money? Okay. Oh, no, I'm not the government. I can't. Okay, so, okay. Yeah, this is what is happening. This is a reality of our society. All right? And this is continuing to go in this direction. Now, can you sustain that? Okay, so this is important. This is why ownership is extremely important. Because if you're in an environment where you don't own anything, you're at the whims of the government. You don't have true ownership. You don't have true liberty. And that's what's scary about people. People talking about, well, how are we going to replace this? How are we going to replace that? No, that's not the problem. My question is, how do we reduce this? But no one wants to talk about that. Now, let's go a little further here. I'm sure your mama talked about sin and your dad talked about sin because I used to get whoopings every time you did something. In the South, I'm from Georgia, and we get whoopings down there. So I recognize at a very early stage, sin has consequences. All right? Now, if we were all angels, and nobody tells a lie, nobody steals, then this wouldn't have to be so bad, would it? I see my neighbor and say, hey, how you doing, man? Can I help you today? I get up and go, what about you? Can I help you out? Let's just say everybody was living like that. Would we need the government? But we stopped doing it, didn't we? Now, there's the government access. We have normalized the abnormal. This is normal to most people now. And if I even talk about the reality of reducing that, people panic. Oh, we got to pay for this. We got to pay for that. We got to pay for this. No. We are paying for it. We make the money. The government is not making the money. So we're being treated as if we're the enemy. And that whole thing has to be reversed. And it starts first with ownership. Right now, if you don't own anything, you're vulnerable to the government. And by the way, it's not just Ohio in trouble. This country's in trouble. The whole country's in trouble. We're running on a fiat money system where we print money ex nihilo and think that's real money. And at some point, guess what? The chicken's going to come home and roost. Even our state budget, you know, we got a lot of that coming from the federal. That spigot gets turned off, oh boy, we're going to be in for a ride. Now, there's something else I want to show you here. If I can get the slide to work here. All right. Now, this young lady, she nailed it when she said it's supposed to look like this. We got a long ways to go. And you do realize we're not having as many children. What happens when we stop having the children? What happens to society? See how important this is? So, one thing I got to say about my church, and I do love that we know how to be fruitful and multiply that church. Because I'm telling you, there were little children running around everywhere. I said, oh, this is beautiful. Because somebody's going to have to help me to my pew when I get to be 75 years old. So I said, y'all think about that because y'all going to need to help me. So this is what needs to happen. That means we got to get our act together and stop depending on the government to do everything for us. All right? I'm having some technical difficulties, but I'm going to get through it. All right? Now, here's another thing that we don't like. When you have freedom, that comes with responsibility. You ever heard the term self-government? We don't use that very often. What I mean by self-government is that we, as individuals, this love thy neighbor concept, it works for government too. So we grew up in the South, and when you're growing up, you always have to say hello to an adult, all right? Because we usually have the front porch. I don't see many front porches in the north. But you're driving down or you're walking down the street, and then someone will see you and they say, boy, did you see me over here? Oh, that's Mr. John, and you better wave both hands too, like, I see you, I see you. But this is change. We're all locked in now. We're not neighborly like we used to be, and we're getting further and further apart. So, we got to change that mentality. Self-government has to be the number one thing we think about now. Because we are products of a government, and I'm going to have to tell you this, folks, but we're more communistic in our thinking than we think. If I were to put down the 10 tenets of communism and then line them up to you, and you look at it and I tell you how we're functioning as a society, you're going to say, ooh, but we never think about it. So, this is something to think about. This is why ownership is important. The true normal is going to look like this. Now, why are we doing all this? Okay? We're trying to save homes, basically. I get phone calls every day. People that are very elderly, some 75, 80 years old, and they're paying for stuff. They have no idea what they're paying for. They're crying. They can't come up with a way to figure things out. I try to help them. But you know where the help comes from? Take a guess. The government. Oh, we can't do anything for you. You lived a good life in that house, so now, maybe it's time for you to move on. And, no thought of generational wealth transfer, nothing. You paid yours, you're out. I get phone calls like this every day, and it's heartbreaking. Something I try to do, but I can only do so much. Now, generational wealth transfer. You know how I got from I grew up in a poor environment, but my mother told me being poor doesn't make you stupid. All right? So, at a very early age, we had to learn to work. We had to learn to take care of our neighbors. And believe it or not, if we didn't hear from a neighbor after about 2 or 3 days, my mom would make you go down to her house and check on her. That's the way we grew up. So now when I'm out in the yard, all my neighbors are coming out. Next thing you know, we're supposed to be working. They were out there drinking beer. And we were like, forget what we're doing. And then my wife said, you did do any work today? I said, we were close. But we had a good time. So we want to reduce government waste. Now, am I asking for the world here? I don't think so. Now, we want to stabilize the housing costs based on true supply and demand. Right now, it's being manipulated. I don't know what my house is worth. It's going to be in your eyes and the beholder. If you say, well, I think you worth $230, I said, okay, no, I'm just willing to take that. That's between you and I. The government shouldn't be involved in that. So now the prices get inflated. And the young people are trying to figure out now why they can't afford a house. And it's going to get worse. We also want to take Ohio, and we want the businesses to grow and to thrive. Okay. I moved up here because when I got my engineering degree, my daddy told me, he said, Leonard, if you want to take care of your family, move to Ohio. And why did he tell me that? Because Ohio used to be known as the working man's state. I came up here, there was rubber, automotive, aerospace, you know, everything. I could walk down the street, find a guy that fabricated anything I wanted. Engineer's dream. I look back now, and I see they have destroyed this state. I mean, it was booming. And even under the worst circumstances, it was still doing well. But now it's just slowly eroding. And what are we going to do? We're going to take the state, and we're going to put all the financial burden on the citizens and let them pay for it. They manage it, and now they're going to make us pay for it. All right. By the way, I'm going to get this to end right quick because I know a lot of this is going to be repetitive. But we have some other states that are getting excited about this. It's not just us. I started first with working with my buddy in Michigan, but she's kind of fed up now. She said she's going to run for governor. She said, I'm done with this, man. I'm done playing. And she said, now that she's been in this movement, she said, I don't have a lot of money, but I have a lot of people behind me because I've gotten a lot of people just like we'll get to know you. She said she's done. She said Michigan is done. So she said she's going for it. And by the way, I think this momentum is going to continue. It's not going to go away because I still get phone calls daily about this. It's just sad. All right? Now, what happens when the property tax is eliminated? That's what everybody always asks. That's the first question. Nothing about reducing the size of government. What are we going to do to replace it? Now, I'm not a genius, right? I'm not a financial genius. But I'm sitting there thinking, if I'm spending this amount of money and I'm causing this devastation of a problem, why would I continue doing that? It's not adding up. Why would you even ask me that? I'm telling you, I want you to tell me how you're going to get that number down. And, by the way, give me my house at the same time. Am I asking? I'm not being unreasonable. All right? So I tell people this. Don't panic. They're going to tell you the children are going to die. The schools are going to fall apart. Ain't going to happen. You know what? We were fortunate enough to be able to homeschool. And my wife and I committed to it. We said, we didn't know what we were doing. We just, we're going to do it. She looked at me. She said, what did we just commit to? I said, I don't know. She said, we're going to find out because she said, you helped me make this decision, so you're going to be a part of it. I said, all right. So we go through it. Now, first of all, two things I learned. It doesn't take 12 years to educate a child. As soon as that child can walk and talk, start learning. Number two, this whole idea of social skills and all that kind of stuff, didn't buy. You know why? Because my children could lie, cheat, and steal just like yours. I said, wait a minute. I didn't get this going through school. So now we did a classical education. One of my boys is an electrical engineer, one's a mechanic. They're not the same. But we have to identify their weaknesses. So education becomes a personal thing. You don't hoard them all in the same room thinking you're going to get the same result. Some people move a little faster than others. All right. Now, I'm going to bring this home. I tell people we're not talking about getting rid of taxes. We're not anarchists. I'll pay for services rendered. We got to reassess some priorities. We got to eliminate waste, and we got to do some streamlining. Nobody wants to talk about it because we're protecting our turf. All right. With that being said, we talk about transparency, consolidation of entities, schools and townships. Townships like to protect their little. You can't touch them. Don't mess with mine. It's like, wait a minute here. I thought we were a state here working together. I don't want to hear that. All right. Unfunded mandates coming from the state. Now, I'm going to bring this to an end. I know I've gone over time, right, Brian? All right. If you want to get in touch with us and get more detail, our website is xohiotax.com. We have podcasts, Iowa Political News. We're all over the place. And we can also be reached at that email address. So we can entertain questions afterwards, but right now, no, I went a little bit over time. But thank you for tolerating me because I was freewheeling, but I like to have fun too. So, all right, thank you.
Our next speaker is John T. Pleshnick. Professor Pleshnick's scholarship focuses on the interaction of taxation and public policy. Internationally recognized for his work, Professor Pleshnick won the prestigious bilateral grant twice from the Public Research Agency of the Republic of Slovenia. And his research has been cited as authority by the Congressional Research Service, United States District Court for the District of New Mexico, and the Supreme Court of the United States. Professor Pleshnick currently teaches Tax 1, Tax Procedure, Penalties and Crimes, Wealth Transfer, Tax and Estates, and Trust at the Cleveland Marshall College of Law of Cleveland State University. He also taught courses at North Carolina Central University and Georgetown University. His students twice voted him Professor of the Year in 2012 and 2017. He also received the Golden Apple Award for the Young Alumni Council from the Cleveland State University Alumni Association. Following his graduation from law school, Professor Pleshnick joined the Wall Street law firm of Thatcher, Prophet & Wood, LLP, as an ISIRA attorney. He also served as a law clerk for the Judge David Gusson of the United States Tax Court and as an adjunct professor of the law of Georgetown University Law Center, where he taught tax penalties and tax crimes. Professor Pleshnick earned his B.A. summa cum laude in accounting with a minor in mythology from Belmont Abbey College, where he graduated co-valedictorian. He also earned his J.D. cum laude from Duke University School of Law. While at Duke, he was one of 6 inaugural executive board members to co-found the Drake Journal of Constitutional Law and Public Policy. He also served as editor on the Law and Contemporary Problems and received the Faculty Award for Outstanding Achievement in Taxation and Estate Planning. Professor Pleshnick earned his LLM in taxation from New York University School of Law. While at NYU, he served as executive editor of the NYU Review of Law and Social Change and was the first part-time student to ever be selected as a member of that review. In addition, he was awarded the Certificate of Business Excellence in Columbia University Graduate School of Business and is a graduate of the Ohio State University Public Leadership Academy. In the past, he served as Vice President of Council, Chair of Finance, and Councilman at Large for the City of Willoughby Hills, where he personally negotiated and drafted the tax abatement that brought over 300 jobs and the single biggest employer in the last decade to Lake County. He also served as Vice President of the Board of Trustees for Willoughby East Lake Public Libraries and Chairman of the Willoughby Hills Recreation Commission. Professor Plushnik was sworn in as the 79th Commissioner of the Lake County, Ohio on February 11th, 2021. He is one of 3 Lake County Commissioners who meet weekly in Painesville to set the budget and administration policies for the country government. Let's give a warm welcome to Professor John T. Plushnik.
Hello, hello. Once again, my name is Professor Commissioner John Plushnik, and I am humbled and honored to be here with Leonard Gilbert, a man who I've learned so much from over the years. I remember long before I had any of these titles, I would come to Heritage Club meetings where Leonard was our president. And so for so long, I've heard from him about how we have to bring our faith into public life and public service, because if we don't have a starting point that there is absolute right and wrong, if we don't have a starting point to love thy neighbor as thyself, it's very hard to get to the point where we can actually fight for what's right, because you don't know which way is up. How do you find the ceiling, right? So thank you for being the soul of this movement to abolish property taxes. But it's important for us to bring it back to the numbers. As you've heard from my way too long bio, I have spent my entire life studying, researching, teaching tax law. So when I hear from the politicians in Columbus, you don't know what you're talking about, I say, what do I know? I just spent my entire life studying tax law. You clearly are more qualified than I am. By the way, they also haven't heard of sarcasm. So we have to take it back to the numbers. We have to be realistic in this movement, because ultimately, there are some things we need. Taxes are a necessary evil. There's a reason why people were complaining about tax collectors in the Bible. We've been hating on taxes that long. But we understand that there are some things we do need, because men are not angels. And some do commit crimes. We do need secure borders. We do need a criminal justice system. We need to fund our police. And roads are pretty nice too. So there are some very limited roles where government isn't just a nicety, it's a necessity. And we would all agree to that in this room. So the question is, how do we fund what is necessary in a fair way? And is it possible to get there if we abolish property taxes? In a word, yes, it is possible. But we're absolutely right to be suspicious when the politicians come back and say, if you abolish property taxes, either we're going to have to raise all the other taxes through the roof, or we're going to have to take away essential services. No roads, no police, no fire for you. We're all going to live in a post-apocalyptic wasteland where you're your own police officer. That's not realistic, and that's not where we are going to go. In reality, folks, and I can make it this simple for you, Ohio faces 3 possible futures. And all of us individually have to make a choice which of those futures we want for ourselves and our children. Future number 1, we change absolutely nothing. By the way, that's a politician's favorite answer. Talk a lot, do nothing. We allow property taxes to go up and up and up with inflation. Seniors and those on fixed incomes are taxed out of their homes. Young people can never afford to buy a home, because even if they could make a mortgage payment, they cannot pay the property taxes. That's one possible future. Just let property taxes keep going up. Future number 2, we hear a lot from our friends in Columbus. How many of you heard from a state rep, a state senator, or some other politician? If you do this, there'll be no police, there'll be no roads, no schools. There'll be no... I think that the people in Columbus don't like this presentation. There'll be no libraries, there'll be no That is door number 2. Door number 2 is we just cut local services to basically zero. I think we'll just do without on the microphone.
You keep hitting the button or?
Okay, we'll try this one. So that is door number 2. Door number 1, change nothing, let everyone be taxed out of their homes. Door number 2, slash local services to nothing. Leonard, you're your sheriff. I'm your road crew. I'm like throwing pebbles down, and Brian's the new fire chief. That is an option. I don't think it's a good one. We're all laughing because it seems ridiculous. But here's door number 3, and here's what no one in Columbus wants to talk about. Instead of taxing everyone to death, instead of taking away the essential services that we agree government should provide, roads, police, fire, how about we just cut the state budget in Columbus? You say, well, is there really enough money there? Let's do some simple math. You don't have to be a tax professor to understand this, although I do happen to be a tax professor. But let's do some simple math. This year's budget for Columbus, record-breaking, budget-busting budget, is over $100 billion. Let that sink in. Let that sink in, folks. A billion is 1,000 million, and a million is 1,000,000. So we have $100,000 budget in Columbus. We top $100 billion. All property taxes bring in approximately $20 billion a year. All the taxes, commercial, residential, seniors, young, old, rich, poor, everyone, $20 billion. So it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out that if you cut the state budget in Columbus by just 20%, you more than cover the delta from abolishing all property taxes for everybody. Now, if we're forced to choose between ever-increasing property taxes, no local services, no police, no water, no roads, or, door number 3, our state reps and senators are forced to do the job we pay them to do, we elect them to do, which is sit down, compromise, and find a way to save a modest 20% from their budget. I'm liking door number 3 a heck of a lot. What about you? And that's why they're so afraid that we're having this statewide conversation. They say it's impossible, it can't be done. My response is, if you really, truly believe that, you're admitting to us that you are unqualified. Step aside, let someone else do the job. Amen. That's the real bottom line, but most of them do know. Let's be honest here. They didn't get there by being dummies. They had to scheme and connive and campaign for many, many, many years to get where they are today. I'm not a state rep, I never will be. I'm not a state senator, I never will be. I respect the fact it takes a lot of effort to get there. They're not dummies. So they know the math I've just told you. Most of them understand that a 20% cut would pay for a property tax wipeout for everybody. Your lives are permanently better. The state is permanently more competitive. As Leonard said, Ohio is dying. We're shrinking every decade. We lose population. We lose congressional seats. We've gone from the heart of America to just another dead state in the Rust Belt on its way to the end. Sad, right? Cleveland was once a top 5 city in the United States of America. Youngstown was once a beating heart of the Midwest economy, and now they are shells of their former self. Folks will come from everywhere. They come from Georgia, California. They come from China and Japan. They come from the whole world to work here. And now there are no jobs and a bunch of empty buildings. They've exported everything. But you know what we do know? What tax professors know? If you just pay attention to the way people migrate in the United States, it just so happens that the states with the highest taxes, like Ohio, like California, like New York, their population is plummeting. And the states with the lowest taxes, like Texas and Florida, their population is skyrocketing. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Texas is perfect. The border has been a in a way it has not been for Ohio. But that should tell you how important tax policy is. With all the problems Texas has, just because they have better tax policy than us, people are pouring in. Jobs are creating themselves. And business is booming. There's a gold rush in Texas, folks. And it's not because Texas is such a nicer place than Ohio where the people are smarter. It's because the taxes are lower and everybody knows it. So another part of the conversation we haven't even started to have is that not only can we pay for property tax reform by cutting government spending, we're not even talking about the huge benefit. This is not just relief to taxpayers who need it, and yes, it is a lifeline. We are saving our seniors by doing this. But it's more than that. This is talking about the future for your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. Do you want them to grow up in the greatest state and the greatest nation in the world that's growing and thriving with opportunity, where they don't just want to stay, they want to be a part of it? Or do you want every last person under the age of 40 to be looking for the exit? Because if we keep on taxing people out of our homes, we'll eventually tax them out of the state. And that is the way that a great state becomes a good state, that a good state becomes a poor state, and a poor state just dies. That's the path we're on right now, and we need a U-turn, folks. We need a U-turn hard and fast. And I do say hard, because it is really hard to take money away from government. Let me tell you right now, government never saw a dollar it didn't want to spend. And so when you hear all these politicians say, well, you need to come up with a way to pay for this, there needs to be another tax. No! By the way, I've been called a lot of things over the years. Some of them not so nice, but the one nickname I do like is Commissioner No. Because I say no to taxes. And when our friends in Lake County tried to kick our sales tax to the third highest in the state, I was the only one to vote no. And in 2 weeks, residents, neighbors banded together, signing petitions, coming to meetings, protesting. The other two commissioners heard loud and clear, I'm not going to be in office very long if I don't start to listen. And you know what happened in 2 weeks after I was outvoted 2-1, the only no vote? In 2 weeks, the other two commissioners changed their votes to no, and we repealed their tax increase before it ever took effect. So let me tell you something, folks. I have lived it. I have seen it. And I've heard those politicians say there's no way Lake County can balance its budget and build a jail, and we had to build a jail, big obligation, over $200 million. There's no way we can balance the budget, build a jail, without raising taxes. I said, Buckus, I've read the budget. It can be done. Yeah. There's some things you may not like. There are some cuts that may have to be made. There's some expenditures that will never happen, but it can be done. And here I stand today. We're building that jail. The steel is already standing up, and we did not raise taxes. So guess what? The politicians will always tell you it can't be done. We know it can. And if Lake County can say no to a sales tax increase, Ohio sure as hell can tell Columbus no to these insane property tax increases. Now, when this all started, I want to tell you, when this all started years ago, I saw it coming. I'm a tax professor. Joe Biden is cranking inflation to a level we have never seen before. Honestly, I haven't even been alive for an era of higher inflation. This is the highest inflation of my lifetime. So I said to all my friends in the state legislature, and I talked to them, I said, guys, there's going to be a huge property tax spike from Biden inflation. It's going to be huge. It is going to be crushing. And we have to do something about this before it hits. Not a big deal. Then I said, guys, the values are in. We know what the taxes are going to be. Well, people care. They tell us. They got the revaluation. People don't do the math. They're not going to take the revaluation of their house and calculate exactly how much the taxes are going to go up. They have lives and jobs beyond politics and this nonsense. They're not going to know until they get the bill. He said, you mark my words, those bills come out, people are going to panic because now they realize I am literally going to be taxed on my home. They're going to have to beg, borrow, and and steal to just pay half a year's tax, and they have no idea how to get the other half. They didn't listen to me. But the bills were sent out, and suddenly people started to wake up. Now, Leonard and Brian Massey and the Committee to Abolish Property Taxes were already working hard, but people started to listen because they saw those bills, they did the math, and now they realize they can't afford to pay it. Well, then all my friends in Columbus started saying, well, every 3 years people get really mad, and then they go home. That'll be it. Then they go home. They'll give up after a little while. We just keep our heads down and ignore it. I said, no, this is different. People get mad when they get a 3%, 4%, 5% increase. When it's 20, 30, 40, 50%, they're not mad, they're panicked. Because there is no way for them on their kitchen table to make up that delta. And the response we got next was, well, we have no interest in cutting our budget, so they'll just have to deal with it. If they can't afford to pay their property taxes, seniors should just sell their homes and move into an apartment. We literally got these responses from our state reps and state senators. And my friends, not to pound the Bible, but that is evil. That is the opposite of loving thy neighbor as thyself. That is a complete and total lack of empathy. The folks in Columbus are so fat, so happy, and so far away from real people that their honest response to the crisis of property taxes is sell your home and move. Well, guess what? That's what people are doing. That's why Ohio is dying, because idiots like you are saying we refuse to fix things. That's why we, the people, have to do it for them. When the politicians won't do their job, we, the people, have to do it for them. So let me close in saying this. Some of you are here because you want to abolish property taxes. You think it's time for a completely new system, and I agree with you. But for those of you who say, I just want to cut property taxes, take them back to where they were before COVID, prevent them from going up again, limit increases, maybe exempt seniors. I've made those proposals too, and I hear you. But let me tell you something. Whether you want to abolish property taxes altogether, or you're just hoping for a big property tax cut, our friends in Columbus are only talking about this issue because they have the sword of Damocles hanging over their head. They know if they can't satisfy a majority of Ohio voters before November 2026, when this amendment goes on the ballot with your signatures, your nomination, and your support, they know we're going to take all the money back.
Yes.
So whether you want to abolish property taxes outright or you just want to tax them, you know what you need to do? Before you leave this building, you need to sign the petition to abolish property taxes. You need to take a packet to circulate with your neighbors, and you need to tell Columbus, it's over. It's not just Commissioner no, it's Ohio saying no, we are not paying these taxes anymore, and you can't make us. When they say we have no appetite to cut our budget, I say, you say, Ohio says, we don't give a damn. We are abolishing property taxes, and there ain't nothing that you can do about it. God bless you. God bless Ohio. And God bless the United States of America.
Fabulous. That is fantastic. Brian Massey is retired and has been married to Bernadette for 50 years. They have 2 children and 4 grandchildren. He has worked on property taxes for over 10 years. Brian started Lobbyists for Citizens, a 501c4 nonprofit organization promoting honesty, integrity, and transparency in government by exposing lies, deceptions, and betrayals. With Leonard Gilbert and John Mara, mayor of Timberlake, and I'm sorry if I say her name wrong, Vesa Majek Boris, is that correct? They started a movement to abolish Ohio property taxes. Let's give a warm welcome to Brian.
it's difficult to follow Commissioner Pletchnik. It's so everybody. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. This has been quite a journey. I started, as Leonard said, 10 years ago. It was just very simply looking at my own property tax bill, went up 40% in 10 years I've been in the home, and I said, if it continues to increase, I'm going to price myself out of the home. Not going to be able to afford it. So that got me started on how do I give back to the community. I'm not running for public office. I'm not trying to make money. It's costing me money to do this. But as we say, all three of us live by the biblical commandments. And love thy neighbor is a commandment, not a suggestion. So when we pull back the curtain on what is happening in the state, we can honestly say there's no one caring about the average citizen. There's maybe a few reps here and there, but many of the reps are being controlled by the Matt Hoffmans of the world, Ron McCauley's. If they want to work their way up, through the state legislature, you better be minding your P's and Q's and do what you're told. Leonard and I started, I guess Leonard was probably more than 5 years ago. We got together and we said we've got to reach out to our representatives. So we tried to reach out to Senator Serino, Representative Callender, and Dan Troy is the other representative. No one would meet with us. So we said, well, let's go down to the state. And we went to the state and went to the House Ways and Means Committee. And we got a lot of nice guests. Nice to see you here. Nothing. We went to Representative Romer's committee to review and reform property taxes. And when I was speaking before that committee, they censored my speech. They played classical music over what I was saying. When I got home and saw that, I wrote an email to the representatives, and to Representative Romer, and I thought they'd say, well, Mr. Massey, this is a problem. They did say it was a glitch, is what they said. So I thought they would say, well, come down next month and you can read it again and get it on the record. No, they didn't care. They didn't care what I was saying. Leonard and I said, well, let's, we're going to give it another try. So we invited all of all the reps, all the senators. We rented a room for $50 in the Capitol. I believe we had to pay $50 just to meet with them. So we did that. And they were even going to charge us for a cable so that we could use our presentation. We said, no, we'll bring our own cable. Don't worry about it. No one showed up except there was half a dozen legislative aides. No one was over 35 years of age. I started to talk to them about the American dream, family, good job, home ownership. Then I realized, I don't think that generation, again, they're all under 35. I don't think they have the same American dream. And I find that to be very sad. Very sad. But then, and Leonard and I were continuing to talk, I said, well, what's happening with our society? We're an ungodly, uneducated, immoral society. Those are three huge obstacles to overcome. And it's not going to overcome overnight. What I've come to realize, when I started these presentations, I used to talk about inside, outside village, hospital lane 20 mils or emergency levies. I promise I'm not going to do that kind of thing, okay? Because very few people really understand. 40% of the people in Lake County never see their property tax bill. It goes to their bank. So they really don't know who's getting their money. About 2/3 of it goes into the school funding. And when I try to talk to somebody of saying, well, can we educate people on this? Most people have disengaged from local politics. Mm-hmm. And I say to them, as I was educating some of my friends that I've known for over 30 years, the only thing that they were worried about was the Browns were down by 10 at halftime.
Exactly.
So I say to them, if that's what your worry is, you're part of the problem. Now, we've got the federal government. We can't do anything about that. But we certainly can do something in the local politics and the state politics. And it's incumbent upon us to get involved. Because we're the ones that are supposed to be driving the bus. But what we've done is we've advocated our authority. Because, and I'm guilty of it, I thought I was doing my job when I went to the polls and I voted. And I said, well, those people are going to take good care of me. They're good Republicans, good Democrats, they're good Libertarians. They'll be thinking about us. I couldn't be further wrong. What I have come to realize now, though, in a bigger picture, what I see is that the legislators no longer are really following the Constitution, our Constitution. I ask, are we a constitutional republic, or are we a representative democracy? I've had a slide presentation, but it's not working, so I'm not your apartment. So we will, constitutional republic, again, you select and you elect your officials. But they are supposed to be operating with the rules of the Constitution, the state constitution. Anybody know how many times our state constitution has been changed? 2. No, you're a little off there, Leonard. 175 times. Okay. See, what's happening, and that's because it is so easy to change our Constitution with a 50% plus 1. That's, to me, that is not really a constitutional republic. We may be calling ourselves, but it's really a representative democracy, where the majority rules, 50% 1. So I call that a deception, where people are really not understanding our actual form of government. So if you hear anybody say we're a constitutional republic, well, Ben Franklin back in the day said, when asked what type of government to form, he says, it's a republic if you can keep it. I'm now asking, our 250-year experiment, is it over? Are we ready now to say we're all socialists? I've got a video of Dan Troy, who is a representative. He's been a lifelong Democrat for a long time. He's also the Lake County Commissioner. I went to a town hall meeting, and he said that school funding is the purest form of socialism. And I said, he's right. I asked the question, what's the role of government? Who is responsible for the education of the child?
Parents.
If you're not thinking as parents, you may want to wear that socialist label. Because that's what's happening. Now, how do we get it? It's a tremendous education curve. But if you have legislators that don't understand that and will create, even at the federal level, they create this dependency on government, it's tough to give it up. It's really tough to give it up. If you look at the very first article of the state constitution, it talks about protecting property. And I submit that our legislators are not protecting our property. Article 6, Section 2 of the state constitution says that the state is responsible for providing the funding of the schools. They've done a masterful job of twisting that around and saying to us, you've got local ownership and you've got local control by shifting that burden onto the local community. I don't know how many school board meetings I've been to. Maybe I get 3 minutes, but nobody answers any questions. And I've sort of given up on trying to elect, quote, conservatives to the school board. Something happens when they get on the school board, and all of a sudden they lose their conservatism, and they really don't know what it means, and they just go along to get along. So, what I've said is I do not believe, personal opinion, I don't believe that our public schools can be saved. I wish I was wrong. I wish I could say that there's going to be a magic switch. But I don't believe that public schools, I think there has to be competition, and I have to say that they should compete for the children rather than saying you live in this district, you're going to that school. That school may not provide the same value system that that family has. I want to go back to the family. I think the family should be controlling the children. The children don't belong to the state at all. But what I see happening in the schools, we're providing more services. We got pre-K, pre-K, and then we got a dentist, and now we're going to have more doctors. So what's happening is that the state is taking over the role of the family. Now, there's a question of, anybody hear about the DeRolf case? It's another thing that back in, I think it was 95, 97, they determined under the DeRolf case that the use of funding property taxes for funding of schools is unconstitutional. Now, it was kicked around, I think it went 5 or 6 more years through the court. Then it seemed like the Supreme Court threw up their hands and said, they passed it over to the legislators. Now, legislators said, well, we made it constitutional because we've changed the funding formula, and we think this funding formula is constitutional. And I found that very interesting, and there was a paper written by Mr. Fortney, I believe it was. He's the communications director at the State Senate. And I can provide that for you. And he was saying absolutely that the school funding formula is now constitutional. Unfortunately, with our branches of government, the only one that determines whether or not it's constitutional is the Supreme Court. Just because for 2 decades the Supreme Court hasn't weighed in, is my understanding, and I'll ask Professor Abolishing to tell me if I'm wrong, somebody has got to go before the Supreme Court. So why don't the legislators, why don't they go before the Ohio Supreme Court and say, is our funding formula constitutional? We think it is. Can we get a ruling on that? Because the union says, school unions say it's unconstitutional. So I ask the question, well, why doesn't the union go before the Supreme Court to determine whether it's constitutional or not? You know what I think? They don't want to hear the answer. They don't want it. So if you say it more enough times that it's constitutional, the average citizen said, well, I heard it on this radio program or this TV program that it was constitutional, so it must be constitutional. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, many of our citizens do not even understand the 3 branches of government. That's a problem. How can we be this constitutional republic if we're just sitting home watching the Browns or Ohio State? It doesn't make sense to me. What I started to do, and something that's very obvious to me, again, because I'm an accountant, I try to make the numbers talk. When I go to, in Lake County, I would ask for public records requests. I would ask for 5 years worth of financial statements, because what I wanted to see what was happening in that taxing authority, be it Deepwood or Lake Metro Parks or the Pine Lab. And what I found was the accumulation of massive amounts of cash. And this guy will tell you, because I go before the commissioners and I say, you cannot continue to suck the lifeblood out of the community. The money has to be in the hands of the taxpayers so that we can spend it and keep the economy going. The other problem is, I found out that there are no checks and balances in our overly complex tax system. There's a county budget commission. Every county has it made up of a auditor, treasurer, and usually the prosecutor, sometimes a county commissioner representative. Their role is to be the watchdog for the taxpayers. But I can tell you in Lake County, and I think it's probably true in many of the 88 counties, is they do nothing but a rubber stamp. So a taxing authority sends in their 5-year projections. Yeah, it looks good, all the numbers add up, debits equal credits, and we're good to go. They're trying to do that. Representative David Thomas was trying to do that along with Auditor Galloway from Lake County, trying to get more teeth into the County Budget Commission. But what happens is you have to have members of that commission to have a spine. You got a school board that says, hey, I got 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe 100% of my annual expenses, I've got them covered in the cash. It takes a pretty strong individual to say to that school board, you gotta bring that down. So you're not going to be able to collect taxes. How quickly do you think the lawyers would be running all over that? And that's the problem, that we've got a system that doesn't work at all. So where does this all go? Is that not working? Why don't you just pull the plug?
Well, I mean, I didn't know if you were going to use it or not. That's why I was
I mentioned about there's another video that I had I wanted to show you was that Representative Ron Young. And when I heard that, Ron Young was the state rep for 30 years or so, and he was also Lake County Commissioner on the very last day as a commissioner. He said, Brian, would you record me? Because he knew that I was going to bring a camcorder and record all the sessions. I said, I'd be glad to do that. I didn't know what he was going to talk about. I think he wanted to get something off his chest. Because here's what he said. He said, this is Ron. You can't hear the video, but you can try. But what he said, the top priorities of government is to protect itself and to grow. The top priority of any elected official, his words, not mine, is to protect themselves and get reelected. No mention of what's in the best interest of the citizens. When I saw that, coupled with everything that I was looking at with these projections, these financial statements that I would receive, I said, this is what we have. We've got a public sector that has outgrown the private sector's ability to pay for services. The number one question they asked, Leonard may have mentioned it, how are we going to fund the schools? We're not going to replace. We don't see replacing it dollar for dollar. Because people were saying, well, if you need to replace it with a sales tax, you're going to need a 20% sales tax. And nobody will pay that. Well, I'm saying if you're not going to pay a 20% sales tax, you think that's too much. Well, why would you pay that too much as a property tax? It doesn't make sense to me. I then started with Auditor Galloway. I said, do we need 611 school districts in the state of Ohio? In Lake County, we've got 9 school districts, 9 superintendents, 9 curriculum directors. I don't know how many principals, assistant principals. And I'm saying, I think we can do some consolidation. Then I meeting with Auditor Galloway and Treasurer Zern. They said, hey, Brian, if you eliminate the property tax, you're not going to need an auditor and a treasurer. And I said, well, that's a start. That's a definite start. So again, that should be reversed.
Yes.
But it's not. see why a government would be involved in that. Lake County gave $1.8 million to a third-party appraisal company. Controls our destiny, but is not accountable to us. I think there was a party in Boston a few years back that complained about that. So when you think about it, how do we shrink the size of this government? Eliminate the property taxes. You're not paying for property valuations to third parties. And we were figuring out that's got to be $200-300 million. We don't need it. How much would we save if we eliminated, let's say, instead of 2 people, the auditor and the treasurer, we had 1? How many millions would that be? How about the staff, the supporting staff of all of these? Would they be more accountable to the people? You don't have to go for a board of revisions anymore and have them throw you a bone. The whole thing is immoral. But when I think about overall, I'll answer any questions that you may have. But when we've got legislators, senators, and the representatives, and they're saying they don't care what happens with all of these committees and all the good intentions of David Thomas, but nothing is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, because the people are going to just have to accept what the legislators do. And I said, those days are over. We're in charge. And the promise that I've made throughout the state is that I'll never give up. Leonard, John Barr, and I are never going to give up. If you help us collect the signatures, we'll process the signatures. We'll stand on the front line for you. This is not without some issues, and we understand that. When you're eliminating $20 billion or so from the budget, a lot of people are going to be upset. One last thing, they say, well, what about police and fire? I probably have some fire departments and police departments pretty upset with me. I said, well, we're not, because we're going to pay for our reasonable government services. Just don't tie it to our house. What don't you understand about that? I said, send me a bill. Right now, I'm paying $2,100 for the Concord Township, and it's lumped in. So I said to Albert Gallo, I want to know how much I'm paying for police, how much I'm paying for fire, roads, whatever service. I want to be able to, transparency again, transparency of government. How much am I paying compared to somebody else? If I'm paying $1,000 for my police or fire, and somebody else is paying $100 in another municipality, you think I'm going to ask a question? They don't want you to know. They do not want to be transparent. So it's incumbent upon us to say, we are in charge. This is what we want. I just say, so everyone that's collecting signatures, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. We're processing them. Even if you turn in a petition that has 1 signature, we're processing that 1 signature. Because everybody's vote counts. If you're a circulator, I ask that you make sure you turn in your circulator statement. There's only 1 county per petition. And the reason for that is when we turn in the petitions to the Secretary of State, what they will do is they will, we'll have it in banker boxes by county. They take those paper petitions and they send it to the Board of Elections. So we're going to send everything to Mahoning and then to Trumbull. Which is, by the way, I had some numbers here. What did I do with the numbers? I had some numbers for Mahoning County, and I think I mentioned it too. Mahoning County is doing absolutely fantastic. All right, they've reached the 5% minimum. They're almost double that. They're over 6,000 signatures. So I say congratulations to everybody in Mahoning County. we need some help in trouble, and so if anybody can help in trouble, that would be great. Also, we're not giving out total number of signatures. I know that probably infuriates the legislators, but I'm so happy with that. Really, we're not giving them any notice at all. Because no matter what I say, no one's going to be happy until I say we got our goal. Our goal of we need 413,000. Our goal is 15% by county, and that would bring in about 620,000. That will solve the problem of voters not being registered or they're throwing it out. So 413 is a heavy lift. We understand that, and but even yes, sir.
You said you need help getting signatures in Trumbull County.
Yes.
Can Mahoning County residents, electors, circulate petitions?
Absolutely. Believe it or not, believe it or yes, to answer your question directly, yes. You do not have to be in that particular county to collect signatures. Believe it or not, and check this with the Board of Elections in Lake County, you don't even have to be a registered voter to be a circulator, and I found that a little strange. You don't even have to live in the state to be a circulator. Now, interesting statistic. Before we started all this, we got a quote from a company that actually collects signatures. We reported $1 million to get 413,000 signatures. We were a little short, like about $1 million. So I was telling some political operatives, I said, well, Brian, that's really cheap. He said, normally it's $3 to $5 million to get an amendment on the ballot. So what we are doing, this is a true grassroots initiative. And I'm so proud to be just a small part of this whole thing. We got over 2,000 circulators. Leonard's role is he has developed the commanders and captains so that we'll be communicating with them and tell them, okay, we got the 5% here, let's move over and get it in the adjoining county. We have actual tax. We try to update signing locations. I've got some more people helping me in that area. So we're building this team as we go along. And but as I said, we're not going to quit. Okay. Any questions? Thank you so much. Yes.
I have one. This might be good for John or you. 2018, I did some numbers from when I ran for office. Anyhow, Mahoning County at that point had somewhere between 34 or 36 boards that were under the direction of the commissioners. The state at that time average was like 18 for a county to have the boards under the direction of the commissioners. I'm not going to hold anybody to having the numbers out there. I'm not throwing it out. But Hope, which Marie, okay, myself and Mark are coming under a lot of fire here, which you guys obviously know, from one of our own commissioners and our auditor in Mahoning County. They're saying that they would have to raise the property tax or sales tax by 20%. Well, I'm telling you right now, we're going to be the biggest coalition they've ever seen. We not ever get them elected again if they take the sales tax up. Just off the top of your head, how many boards does Lake County have under the direction of the commissioners that the taxpayers are paying for? I'm not going to hold you to it. Because it's not a trick question.
No. There are a lot of boards, and I go to a lot of board meetings. We record a lot of board meetings. Lakeland Community College, for example, and what we see in Lake County, they've got a board. They get $20 million a year from the taxpayers. The enrollment was over 10,000. It's now down to 4,400. It's a ghost town. It's a community college. You've got another board or an Auburn Career Center that's a vocational, and they're growing. They're spending money. So we've got a narcotics board. We've got a Deepwood board.
I believe to more clarify that question. I think it was under the direction of hiring and firing from which we have a big bureaucracy. If I come to a commissioners meeting in Mahoning County, they kick it to somebody that's on the board that the commissioners pay. And when I was running for commissioner, it was like 18 boards was the average for the.
So there's a lot of important things to pull out from what you just shared. But the most important is this threat that we've heard from some politicians, some state legislators, that if we abolish property taxes, we have to skyrocket sales taxes to 20-30%. I want to respond to that directly right here, right now, because that is a terrible lie. You have to ask yourself, is the tax elastic or inelastic? In other words, are people's behaviors likely to change based on the rate? And if it's an elastic tax, then people's behavior will change a lot based on the rate. If it's inelastic, they're going to pay it regardless. For example, a death tax is very inelastic. You impose a tax on dying, people will still die. It's pretty hard to stop that, right? So you're not going to change the number of people who die based on raising the estate tax. It's an inelastic tax. Sales tax is more elastic than a rubber band. You raise sales taxes, people spend less. More than that, we live in a country with more than one state. And if you raise sales taxes in Ohio to 20-30%, guess where I'm buying my groceries? I'm going to Pennsylvania, right? We're not just driving across the border for Yingling like we used to. We're going to buy everything in Pennsylvania, right? So all these politicians know damn straight they can't raise the sales tax to 20%, because if they did, they would get 0%. That's number one. Number two, they're not going to raise the income tax because they've already promised their rich donors they're going to eliminate the income tax. You've heard it from the top to the bottom of the ticket. So guess what? If you got three taxes, property tax, income tax, sales tax, and you promised your wealthy donors who just paid you that you're going to eliminate the income tax, the sales tax is more elastic than a rubber band. It goes down to 0 if you raise it. And property taxes are suddenly unconstitutional. Guess what, folks? Government only has one choice. They have to cut spending. They can threaten as much as they like, but they ain't raising our taxes. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't matter how many boards your county has. It doesn't matter. What matters is how many taxing authorities there are in Ohio. And there are way too many. Brian said there were 600-some school districts. He's right. There's over 3,000 taxing authorities. Metro parks, schools, libraries, counties, cities, townships, villages, and everything in between. And that does create a lack of accountability. Years ago, I told my state senator, no longer in office, I'm not pointing at anybody now, I said, one of the fundamental problems is that nobody knows who's raising their taxes. So that if your city raises property taxes, they get all the money, but only 1% of the blame. And that creates a very powerful incentive for everybody to jack our taxes up because no one knows who to point to. So one of the fundamental issues we have to resolve is even with property taxes abolished, heck, there's still income, there's still sales taxes. We need to have one body in charge of all tax increases. Have advisory boards, that's a wonderful thing. But don't give them taxing authority. Put all the authority in one place. And I don't care if it's the county commissioners, I don't care if it's the city council, but put it in one place so we know who to blame. It is deliberately complicated. This property tax system is overly complex for a reason. Who the hell knows what a mill is, let alone the 20 mil floor? Brian Massey does, a tax professor does, but you didn't go to New York University for a tax degree, and you don't want to learn what a mill is. You just want your bill. And it is time to have clarity and transparency in our tax system in Ohio. And step number one is abolishing this entire antiquated property tax system.
John mentioned something that triggered something. They were saying to me...
Trigger warning.
They said, Brian, it's irresponsible of you to abolish the property.
How dare you?
Without coming up with how we are going to replace it. Totally irresponsible. Then I said, no, wait a minute, legislators, senators, and representatives, and Ramaswamy running for governor, and I said, you want to eliminate the income tax. Now, has anybody asked you how you're going to replace it? Don't you think it's irresponsible of them to say that you're going to abolish the income tax without how are you going to replace it? Does that make sense? There's no, it's crickets. They don't answer. There's another question.
Yeah. When this tax, property tax, is voted down, what happens then? Where's the money going to come from? You're saying it's going to come from, is it going to come from the Columbus? I mean, they're not going to just give you $20 million.
Oh, we're asking for more than $20 million. And by the way, we're not asking, we're demanding.
Well, how can you demand it when you don't have the teeth down there? We're not a democratic state anymore. There's all these Republicans down there are going to tell you to hit the road. And that's where it is. That's what the whole thing is. You're talking about they don't answer. Well, they are Republicans, and they will not give you an answer.
So let's answer that question. Let's do it. Let's settle this score right here, right now, today. Because there is a powerful answer to this question, and there is no response to it.
And it's getting worse, too.
Oh, yeah. So let's answer it. Let's answer it loud and proud. Number one, Mr. Massey rightfully cited to you ye old Ohio Constitution.
They don't care about the Constitution.
Doesn't matter. Because when over 60% of our property taxes go to public schools, it is unequivocally true that Article 6, Section 2 of the Ohio Constitution says the state is responsible for paying for public schools. And so when suddenly there is no property taxes, every public school is going to send their district lawyer to the common police court and say, send us the money. Now, they're not happy either, because now that the state are stuck paying for the bill, they actually care about the schools being run efficiently. They're not going to push the unfunded mandates onto themselves. The requirement that all these curriculum directors, principals, and paper pushers be there, suddenly, all those rules that they were unwilling to revisit when you had to pay the bill, they will revisit. And yes, we can combine public schools and save an enormous amount of money without affecting a single student or a single teacher. That we have over 600 school districts in Ohio is ridiculous. And by the way, folks, we're not talking about taking away your football team, your basketball team, or changing the name of the diploma. It doesn't cost a penny more to call your diploma Wycliffe, mine Willoughby, and hers Kirtland. Doesn't cost a dime. It doesn't cost a dime more for you to have your own basketball team against mine and vice versa. What we don't need, and what we must rid ourselves of, are the army of bureaucrats, the six-figure principals, superintendents, assistant superintendents, assistant principals. My God, have you checked? They have a principal for every grade now. These people teach nothing, create nothing, do nothing, but cash the checks at your expense. And I guarantee you that when the state is given a court order to pay the bill, they're suddenly going to revisit this nonsense. That's number one. Number two, money don't grow on trees. The federal government can print money, Ohio can't. So when you take away the property tax, and they've already promised their wealthy donors no income tax, and you know they're not going to go back on that one because no donation means no election, right? So we know they're not going to do that. And they can't raise the sales tax because you'll all go to Pennsylvania. So guess what they're stuck with? They only have one option left. They have to cut their spending. And they can't cut your services because they say, guess what? As of tomorrow, no police or fire for you, no EMTs. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or if you self-identify as an alien. You can't get reelected in Ohio if you tell people no police, fire, or roads. You're done, son. You're done. So at the end of the day, there is no choice. These people are talking tough because they're hoping to scare you into not signing this petition. They say, oh, we won't do anything. You'll be stuck. You'll have no roads. You'll have no police.
How was that?
Youngstown, Ohio.
My man's on fire up there.
I'm gonna need some help answering your
Good
question.
question, though. I mean, there are a lot of people that are scared. I mean, scared. Older people.
Oh yeah, it's a great
Yeah,
question,
I mean,
and it
it
needs
is.
to be answered and asked.
I've got a question for you. Maybe you can help me out. I'm trying to figure out, we talked to representatives who would sign the petition. We've got Jennifer Gross and Tex Fisher, and the only two representatives. We get well, we really support you, Brian, but we really can't sign it. Wouldn't be good for us. And then circulators are calling me and said, no, Brian, there's farmers out here that are really worried about losing their farms. And I said, well, what about the Farm Bureau? I called the Farm Bureau in Columbus twice, gave a message. Because what I'm being told is that the Farm Bureau is not supporting our amendment to abolish property taxes. Does anybody know why? That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense.
Can I add to that? I collected a signature off a 90-some-year-old man in Deerfield. And I'm going to get tears in my eyes because I wear my heart on my sleeve. I see the rock bottom. This guy has a cane. He pulls up to my signing station in a circle in Deerfield. This is what hit me. I had to compose myself before I could even talk to him. He's trying to get out of the car. He said, don't worry, sir. I'll bring it over to you. He looked at me and said a few expletives. He goes, I'm a Marine. Okay. He looked at me and goes, I don't care if I crawl to get to this table. Because I inherited my grandfather's farm. My wife is gone. He goes, I just went down. I still pay my bills in person. He goes, you hit the nail right on the head here. And you're looking at one of the strongest guys you've ever met. Get emotional with this. This guy looked at me and said, I just went down. I paid my insurances. I bought some food. I paid my utilities, my homeowner's insurance. He goes, I don't have money to pay my taxes. This man's in Portage County. And I hugged this guy and I said, you're exactly why we're doing this. He said that he's going to be the last generation owning his farm. I want to know why as well, Brian.
Absolutely.
You know,
if you still have a contact, I'd like to know and interview him because I'm going to do
He's on Portage County. He's all over the paper.
Yeah, I received, but I was telling John today, way down here, I received a call from a gentleman in Huron County. He said, he wanted me, and I didn't, and he said, would you interview me? Because I want to tell my story. People need to hear it. So if you have anyone that are willing to be on camera, we'll drive to their house, we'll interview them, and we will get them on.
I'm sure I can find out. I'll organize it.
The other group that I don't understand, the veterans would be another one. Why are they, all the veterans groups? Because originally we had some veterans group in the county, and they were worried that they were going to lose their funding. And I'm saying, no, they're still going to do that. But what about the Amish community? Family structure? Family farms? I know some of them don't register because of religious reasons, and I'm not trying to question that, but for those Amish that can actually lose their culture, their farm, isn't that enough incentive for them to get en masse to sign and be circulated? I don't understand. Yes, sir.
Last week, I called Ron John was there, and I asked him, I said, there's a county commissioner here in Mahoning County that is saying that if this goes through, townships will cease to exist in Ohio.
Yeah.
There was also a boardman trustee who said boardman would be wiped out. So I asked John for his response, and John, I want you to tell everybody what you said last Friday.
So let me say it plain and clear. The local government that would be least impacted by abolishing property taxes are townships. Least impacted. At the end of the day, townships today rely entirely on property taxes, but it doesn't have to, and it shouldn't be that way. I think we can all agree that whether you live in a city, I live in a village, and she lives in a township, we should all be taxed. We're all Ohioans. You shouldn't have an advantage or a disadvantage depending on where you live. The idea that you should pay more or less taxes, different kinds of taxes based on township versus city, is silly. And frankly, this comes out of politics and history, not planning, not purpose. The idea was that townships were a form of government. If there was like 6 people, 5 of which are farmers and 1 is the local sheriff, and we don't really need a city or a big old government because it's a handful of people on thousands of acres. Made sense. But the idea was always that when the township grew to a certain size, it would become a city. That never happened. We have townships bigger than cities in Lake County and in counties across Ohio. So what we have is a type of government that was made for a half dozen people, maybe 100, 200 people, that we're still using for tens of thousands of people. So one thing that should happen, regardless of what happens with property taxes, is that cities, villages, and townships should all have the exact same taxing authority. So what I would expect would rationally happen if property taxes disappeared tomorrow is the state legislature would just vote to say townships have the same taxing authority as cities, which would ironically mean the townships would actually have more tax revenue than when they started because the income tax raises more than the property tax does in townships. And by the way, even if the state legislature refused to act, every township already has the authority to become a city or a village depending on their size. Less than 5,000 would make them a village, and 5,000 or more would make them a city. So, truthfully, townships have the least to fear. Ultimately, townships are going to have to get their taxing in line with cities and villages because it's not fair that some people are being taxed differently. In some townships, people are being oppressed by property taxes. In other townships, they're paying less taxes because there's no income tax. It creates a potpourri of unfairness. Regardless of where you live, you should be taxed the same. We can all agree on that.
Amen.
I think it's partially an observation and a question. But as I'm sure you guys have noticed as well, you look at this is nonpartisan, right? It's a nonpartisan issue. Who wants to pay taxes, right? It's not Republican or Democrat. Go to any local party Democrat page, they're saying nothing about this. You go to the Republican page, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's bipartisan.
On the Republican side, it's almost like they're trying to tank it. Because they're throwing out these outlandish, 20% cease to exist. It's all this dramatics, this drama. What do you think is going to happen next year when we have the signatures to go on the ballot? Because those people need held accountable because they intentionally made us work harder and we're tired.
You know the only party that has said to us, let us know how we can help. In fact, I've got a meeting with them coming up. Libertarian Party.
Yeah. Well,
so let me share this. I'm going to inject a little partisanship here because I think the comparison really explains the phenomenon you're seeing in the Republican Party. The Democrat Party may be a different story, but the Republican Party you're asking about specifically, I see the exact same dragging of feet, the exact same delay in adoption for the movement to abolish property taxes as I saw with the movement to elect Donald J. Trump president. In 2016, how many party chairmen, how many establishment Republicans said, no, John Kasich all the way. John Kasich won the primary in 2016, right?
I fought that battle. I was the only one in my party, and I was secretary in Mahoning County GOP.
Because you were ahead. You saw that Donald Trump was the future, and more than that, you knew what was coming. And so you and I voted for Donald Trump in 2016 in the primary. We were on the Trump train from the very beginning. And what we're seeing now is the same thing with property taxes. Where the establishment Republicans are like, Kasich, taxes. Oh, we can't do that. But let me tell you something. Come next year, when they see 400-some-thousand signatures and we're this close to getting on the ballot, come next year, when they see the polls that show this amendment has 60, 70, 80% levels of popularity. The only other, and the reason I bring up Donald Trump in part is because the only other issue that has ever gotten that high level of popularity, both in Ohio and in the Republican Party specifically, is Donald Trump. And yet when he was first introduced as our candidate, when property taxes first became an issue, see how the establishment is dragging their heels. But I guarantee you, when they see that their survival and their reelection depends on switching over, just like with Trump, suddenly all the never-Trumpers love the hell out of Donald Trump. And next year, you're going to hear a lot of politicians say, I was with you from the very beginning. Property taxes are evil. I agree.
But some of the Republicans are throwing little tidbits at us. Like with, is it Dave, the guy?
Oh, Dave Thomas and all
Dave Thomas.
And he's working hard. We all recognize that.
We're going to do this, we can do that. And it's reduced.
Well, let me translate. I often say I'm not a politician, but I do speak politician, so I can interpret for you. When Dave Thomas says, exciting new tax legislation, property tax reform, he's really saying, crap. The speaker told me that I'm not allowed to cut property taxes, but I am allowed to name my bill anything I want. So I'm going to call it Property Tax Freedom Trilogy. Property tax relief now. Super duper ultra property tax reform. I'm going to call it that. I'm going to hope and pray to God no one reads it. Because I'm embarrassed that I'm forced to push this nonsense. God bless Dave Thomas. He's a good young man. I believe in his heart of hearts he wants to do the right thing, but he's a freshman state rep, and it's pretty clear he's been given his marching orders because he has published bill after bill after bill after bill after bill, and none of them materially cut taxes. And he's been given sincere proposals for years. All of them Columbus have. We've talked about the lowest bar to show seriousness, which is to give a 100% property tax exemption for our seniors. And I say lowest bar. You know how much it would take from that gigantic, massive, super fat Columbus budget? You know how much it would take to exempt everyone over the age of 65 in Ohio from property taxes with no value and no income limits. You know how much that would take from that massive budget? Less than 3%. That's less than they budget for their inflation adjustments for their raises. And they say that's too much to ask? If every senior in Ohio matters less than 3% of their budget to them, it means they don't give a damn about property tax reform. They don't give a damn.
Okay, we've got to probably wrap it up here. Any other questions? We want to make sure we answer everybody's question. Yes, sir.
Just a quick one. I suggest everyone, if you don't have one in your possession, get an Ohio Constitution, a card. Look at the first page. Memorize the first page. The second clause, which give us all the authority to change, abolish, anything.
We don't know what our authority is, as citizens. We don't.
Educate yourself.
So let's close on this note because, sir, you are 100% right. As easy as it is to point the finger at our legislators in Columbus, we elect them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. As easy as it is to complain about our local boards and commissions, we populate them. Mm-hmm. And we can't make a change. Not with this amendment, not with our reps and senators, not locally, if we don't get involved. And that's why the single most important 3 words that we will say tonight together are we the people. Because if we the people aren't willing to stand up and make a change, let me tell you folks, the politicians in Columbus certainly won't. So we the people are going to pass this amendment. We the people are going to remake Ohio for the future, and we the people are going to remember, as Brian and Leonard always say, that the golden rule is not a suggestion. Love thy neighbor is a commandment from God. Amen?
Amen. Thank you very much.
Back to your goal. You back to your goal.
Yeah, I don't think I need to like.
That was a great question, by the way.
I do want to thank those
Sorry to
in charge
rile you up,
of
but it was the truth. No, my goal is to be
I'm sure all of you did too. So thank you.
This does well.